In love, collapse rarely comes from a sudden dramatic event. There are battles without gunfire, leaving no scars on the body, yet powerful enough to erode a person's spirit. In relationships, these silent wars unfold through indifferent glances, careless interruptions, or the cold repetition of silence. Over time, one's confidence and sense of worth can be worn down without ever realizing it. At Intimate Wisdom, we call this psychological warfare in love, where power does not lie in physical strength, but in the ability to control emotions and shape the beliefs of the other. By understanding this subtle mechanism, we can see why relationships that once seemed perfect can transform into invisible cages, draining both spirit and self-respect. Perspective 1. The method of gradual psychological manipulation. In relationship psychology, there is a mechanism known as subtle erosion. This refers to the process by which a person gradually loses self-confidence and status, not because of a sudden shock, but through behaviors repeated at low intensity over a long period of time. When applied to love, this phenomenon often manifests through seemingly harmless details: an interruption while speaking, an indifferent glance while listening, or a half-hearted smile at the moment one shares something important. For many men, these signals are considered trivial, not worth making a fuss about. Yet, overlooking them creates the first cracks in the foundation of mutual respect. From a behavioral science perspective, this is a form of boundary testing, one person seeking to know whether the other will react to neglect. If left unchallenged, the behavior becomes reinforced and gradually turns into a habit. The greatest difference between physical harm and psychological harm lies in awareness. When we are hurt physically, we clearly know we are being violated. But when manipulation occurs on a psychological level, the erosion happens slowly, making the victim unaware that they are losing value and power in the relationship. It is this very gradualness that makes psychological strategies so dangerous and difficult to resist. Perspective 2. The first signs are ignored. Psychologists call this the boiling frog effect. If you drop a frog into a pot of boiling water, it will jump out immediately. But if the water is heated gradually, the frog won't recognize the danger until it's too late. In love, the earliest signs of imbalance are often so minor that the person involved does not take them seriously. For example, when a woman repeatedly interrupts, when she seems distracted during conversations, or when she leaves midway to do something else, the man often rationalizes it by thinking, "Everyone gets busy sometimes," or "It's just a small habit." In reality, these behaviors are red flags, warning signals that respect is no longer at a healthy level. By choosing to overlook them, men unintentionally send the message that their boundaries can be crossed without consequence. From the perspective of cognitive psychology, this initial neglect is a form of negative reinforcement. Careless behavior is repeated without pushback, and thus it escalates. The result is a relationship slipping into a hidden imbalance. One side tests, the other remains silent. That silence may feel like a way to keep the peace, but in truth, it is the quiet spark that fuels eventual collapse. At the very moment those first warning signs appear but go unaddressed, the relationship has already begun its descent down the slope of disrespect. Perspective 3. The escalation of disrespectful behavior. Once the foundation begins to crack, disrespect no longer stays confined to subtle details. It evolves into a clear behavioral pattern, manifesting through a reversal of roles in daily life. The woman gradually shifts all household responsibilities onto her partner, from cooking and laundry to cleaning. This is not merely a matter of dividing chores, but a way of power positioning. One side commands, the other submits. In communication, dismissiveness and interruptions become increasingly frequent, leaving the man with the sense that his words carry no weight. From the lens of motivational psychology, this is the formation of learned helplessness. When faced with prolonged disrespect, the man begins to believe that resistance is futile, and therefore chooses compliance. This creates a dangerous spiral. The more he remains silent, the more agency he loses, the more submissive he becomes. the stronger her control grows. Emotionally, this imbalance gradually erodes love and intimacy, replacing them with feelings of burden, injustice, and entrapment. Ultimately, a relationship once built on attraction and hope transforms into a stage of psychological domination, where one manipulates while the other slowly loses himself. Perspective 4. Suspicions of infidelity. In any relationship, sudden behavioral changes in one partner often trigger insecurity in the other. When a woman becomes unusually attached to her phone, acts secretive, or responds evasively when asked, the man's brain automatically activates its threat detection system, a mechanism rooted in evolutionary psychology designed to sense threats to attachment. As suspicions grow, he feels compelled to seek evidence, and in this case, checking her messages confirmed his fears. She was not only conversing with multiple men but also sharing intimate photos that crossed the boundaries of a committed relationship. Yet instead of confronting the truth, he suppressed his feelings and avoided conflict. This reveals a fear of rejection, more specifically linked to anxious attachment. Individuals with this attachment style often fear abandonment so deeply that they tolerate mistreatment, avoid confrontation, and cling to the relationship at all costs, even in the face of blatant injustice. Ironically, this avoidance only worsens the situation, granting the woman license to continue her betrayal without consequence. This illustrates a painful truth: it is not betrayal alone that destroys a relationship instantly, but the victim's silence that erodes trust beyond repair. Perspective 5. The roots in early concessions. Every imbalance in a relationship has an origin, and it rarely begins with severe actions. It starts with small signs that are overlooked. When the woman dismissed him by interrupting or showing disinterest, he could have asked questions, asserted boundaries, and safeguarded mutual respect. Instead, he chose silence. In behavioral psychology, this is described as silent reinforcement. Each time he yields, he unintentionally signals that the behavior can repeat without consequence. And when a negative pattern is left unchecked, it does not merely persist, it escalates. This explains why initial disrespect may appear only as a distracted glance, but later grows into full control over daily routines and emotional dynamics. The core issue lies not in her actions alone, but in his reactions. In any relationship, boundaries must be set early and upheld consistently. Once the red flags are ignored, the spiral of disrespect accelerates, transforming love once grounded in admiration into a stage of power imbalance. Thus, the deeper cause does not stem from a woman's sudden change, but from the missed opportunity to correct the course at the very beginning. Perspective 6. The essential element for maintaining respect. In romantic relationships, love and respect do not always go hand in hand. A person may love you, but if they perceive you as someone who yields too easily, their respect will gradually fade. According to social psychology research, respect is sustained when both partners recognize that the other has the ability to set boundaries and is willing to walk away if not treated properly. This principle is known as the latent power principle. Real power does not come from controlling the other person, but from the freedom to exit an unfavorable situation. When a man demonstrates firmness, showing that he is ready to say no and even leave if necessary, women acknowledge the boundary and adjust their behavior accordingly. On the contrary, if he is always fearful, avoiding conflict, and hesitant to confront issues, he inadvertently reinforces the imbalance. What matters here is not aggression or intimidation, but the ability to remain steadfast in one's own values. A man who possesses the power to walk away is often more respected, because his independence sends the signal that his love is a choice, not a dependence. From a scientific perspective, it is this decisiveness and consistency in action that form the cornerstone of a healthy, fair, and enduring relationship. Perspective 7. Sexual power and manipulation in relationships. In the field of sexual psychology, physical intimacy is not only an expression of pleasure but also a symbolic representation of power and bonding. When sexuality is used as a tool to reinforce dominance, it easily turns into an invisible weapon in a psychological battlefield. Some women, instead of seeing sex as an act of sharing and connection, transform it into either a reward or punishment, depending on how their partner behaves. For example, when the man complies with her wishes, intimacy is granted, but if he resists or establishes boundaries, closeness is immediately withdrawn. This dynamic reflects a process of behavioral conditioning. Men are trained to submit in exchange for sexual gratification. From a neuroscience perspective, sexual activity releases oxytocin and dopamine chemicals that strengthen bonding and produce reward sensations. When a woman controls the frequency or quality of sexual encounters, she indirectly regulates her partner's emotions and behavior. The man may fall into a cycle of dependency, where intimacy is no longer a mutual joy but becomes an exchange value for compliance. This subtle form of manipulation gradually erodes his sense of self. What is more dangerous is when sex becomes detached from mutual respect. It is no longer a shared experience but a tool to assert dominance. Over time, this imbalance leads to sexual disconnection, where physical pleasure exists but emotional bonding is depleted. Research indicates that relationships that sustain intimacy without respect often end in emptiness or long-lasting psychological harm. To maintain a healthy connection, sexuality must be rooted in respect and consent. A man must recognize that setting sexual boundaries not only protects himself but is also essential for preserving fairness in the relationship. When sex is no longer used as a weapon of manipulation, it can truly serve as the adhesive that strengthens and nourishes enduring love. Perspective 8. Finances, the invisible weapon in emotional power. In relationship research, finances are often seen as a sensitive issue but one that plays a decisive role in power balance. When one partner controls the majority of economic resources, the other risks falling into dependency, leading to subtle inequality. In the psychological warfare of love, money is not merely a means of spending but becomes a tool that shapes behavior and emotions. A common example is when women use financial contributions or material benefits as a measure of affection. If the man spends generously, he is valued. If he restrains himself or refuses financial support, it may be interpreted as a lack of love. This is a form of manipulation based on positive conditioning. Desirable behaviors are reinforced with material rewards, while undesired actions are punished with coldness or withdrawal. Over time, the man no longer acts according to his authentic values but out of fear of losing affection if he fails to meet financial expectations. Conversely, when a man bears the entire economic burden without proper appreciation, he may gradually feel drained and exploited. Psychologically, this can lead to emotional burnout, where each expense is no longer an act of sharing but a heavy price to maintain the relationship. Social science emphasizes that financial fairness is a key pillar of mutual respect. This does not mean both partners must contribute equally in absolute terms, but rather that contributions should be transparent, clear, and built on agreement. When money is weaponized as a tool of manipulation, love gradually loses its purity and transforms into a transactional arrangement lacking emotional depth. In contrast, when finances are shared with respect, they not only strengthen stability but also enhance the sense of security, a cornerstone for nurturing long-lasting love. Story: Cracks in the Silence. Ethan was a gentle and warm-hearted man from England. During a business trip to Barcelona, he met Ana, a captivating Spanish woman, strong-willed and full of life. From the very first glance, Ethan was drawn to the brightness in her eyes. They started talking, laughing, and before long, two strangers found a deep connection. To Ethan, Ana felt like the morning sun, radiant enough to make him forget the shadows in his own life. At the beginning, their love was sweet and intoxicating, but gradually, small cracks began to appear. During dinner, Ana often interrupted him to tell her own stories. When Ethan opened up, she would sometimes scroll through her phone, barely listening. Ethan felt a pang of disappointment, but he brushed it off. "She's just busy. Don't be too harsh." Those moments repeated, became habits, and Ethan chose silence. His silence, however, did not preserve peace, it created imbalance. Anna grew more indifferent, leaving the table in the middle of his stories, letting him shoulder all the housework, forgetting the small acts of care that once made him feel cherished. Ethan endured it all, afraid that if he confronted her, Anna might walk away. His love for her was vast, yet fragile. One evening, while Anna was in the shower, her phone lit up. Hesitating for a moment, Ethan picked it up. His heart trembled as he read the intimate messages she exchanged with other men, even sending them private photos. In that instant, Ethan felt his world collapse. Yet instead of rage, a heavy stillness overtook him. Tears blurred his vision as fear consumed him, fear of losing her, fear of his world falling apart. But in the mirror, he saw his own hollow reflection, and realized something more painful than betrayal. He had lost his sense of worth long before that night. It wasn't Anna's actions alone that broke him, but his own silence, his own failure to protect the respect he deserved. The tears he shed weren't only for Anna, but for himself, the man who had forgotten how to love himself. That evening, as Anna stepped out of the shower, Ethan spoke softly, "I love you, but I also need to love myself. If this relationship is to continue, it must be built on respect. If not, I will have to walk away." Anna froze. For the first time, her eyes held not indifference, but regret and emotion. Ethan didn't know what the future would hold, whether they would rebuild or part ways. But one thing was certain, in that moment, he had found himself again. And sometimes, true love is not about holding on tightly, but about having the courage to let go when respect is gone. Through these 8 perspectives, one truth becomes clear: disrespect in a relationship never arrives suddenly. It starts with small, subtle cracks that are often ignored: a constant interruption, a dismissive glance, or silence when one should have spoken up. Over time, these overlooked moments accumulate, creating a cycle of manipulation that grows stronger. As silence continues, the man gradually loses his sense of self, while the woman, whether intentionally or unconsciously, may turn love into a battlefield of power through behavior, intimacy, or finances. The key message here is simple: lasting love can only be built on mutual respect. A man must know how to set boundaries, to say no, and to walk away if his value is not honored. A woman, in turn, must realize that genuine love cannot thrive on control, but only on trust, consent, and shared responsibility. In the end, remember this: love is not dependency, it is a choice. Only when both partners respect each other's worth can love become a source of strength, growth, and true happiness. Thank you for listening until the very end. If today's story has gently stirred your heart, whether through an old memory, a present feeling, or something never spoken into words, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Intimate Wisdom is where we come together to touch the hidden corners of love, affection, and sexuality, things that may seem private, yet are in fact the very core of happiness. I wish you to always love deeply, live truthfully, and find yourself in every glance, every touch, and every trembling heartbeat. Affectionate greetings.